Hello, everybody. A very good morning, a very good afternoon, and a very good evening, wherever you're tuning in to the broadcast today from. Good afternoon. My name is Nishit, and wishing you a global namaste as we get into our usual Saturday broadcast. So, if you are new to this broadcast, welcome. You may be watching us on YouTube or on Facebook. So, how you can get involved? Very simple. Just remember to share this broadcast with friends and family so they can join in on the conversation as we go along. This session will be about 50 minutes long, and we will start with a focus topic. Today, we're going to be looking at the Vedas. And then after we have a discussion around the focus topic, we will open up for a general Q&A session. And you can get involved by leaving your thoughts, comments, and questions into the chat area or the comments area on whatever platform you are on with us today. So without any further ado, let me just bring on the video for the day. It is quite a short video, but it's a very interesting topic we've got to explore. And I think one that you will all truly enjoy. So let me just share this video and I'll be back shortly. How can the Vedas be used in real life, and do I need to learn Sanskrit only to read the original Vedas?
Look, my friend, we are a living religion, living religion. Suppose we are stuck in a rut, like most of the other traditions are stuck in a rut. The teachings were given by some prophet who lived 2,500 years ago, and they're stuck with what he said. It's written up in a book, and this is the scripture, and they must get all the answers from what he left behind, the scriptures. And that is it. The prophets have passed away, and we have to still live with those teachings and full stop. So it's ancient Sanskrit, focus on ancient Vedas and the ideas of Rig Veda and so on. So the answer is this: if you are genuine, sincere regarding what is Vedas all about, Vedas are basically saying knowledge regarding nature of reality. Vida, to know the nature of reality. That's all. So if this process is not just restricted to some ancient times when these rishis wrote up the Upanishads and all this is an ongoing story. So we produce modern spiritual giants. I'll just give Ramana Maharshi, see the modern rishi who is presenting the same ideas suited to our own time, in our own language, without having to dig out ancient Sanskrit and look at Panini, Vyakaran, grammar to see what does it mean. This is short aphorism, short entrance, this is what it means. Give it all kind of weird meanings. Rather than go down that route, why don't you focus on modern spiritual giants who are giving you modern Vedas? That means spiritual experience. What I express as my spiritual experience becomes the Vedas. This is the definition of Vedas. So it's a living tradition, living scripture. Why do you want to kind of focus on all this gold? Grow up. Focus on modern spiritual giants. You are so fortunate other religions don't have it. You have it, but you don't want to take it. No, let's go dig out. Maybe if I do that, I'll get the secret. What secret? You get nothing. You get headache. Focus on modern spiritual giants. Look at these teachings. Look at their lives. That will give you the Vedas of today, the knowledge regarding nature of reality presented to you in our own times, in our own language, my friend. Go for that.
Brilliant. So that is a really interesting topic to explore. And to do this, we're going to have our team here. We got Manish Bhai and Vijay Bhai today. Welcome to today's broadcast. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have, just keep this like a three-way conversation here. Let me start by asking a couple of questions. So Vijay Bhai, how many Vedas are there actually?
Okay, as for written scriptures that we have total of 4 Vedas. The Rig Veda, which is one of the earliest, the Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda. So we have these 4 collections. So as I mentioned, the Rig Veda is seen as one of the earliest of Vedas, and the Atharva Veda is seen as the last one. But by and large, the Vedas are written over many, many years. It's not just something instantaneous. But we have these 4 main Vedas written down ones, yes, which have been documented. Yeah. Yeah.
Fabulous. So, Manish bhai, I guess the first question I should have asked is, what are the Vedas actually?
Yes, so we had many people, ancient rishis, we call them. They experienced the ultimate reality, and words they spoke, it was composed into Vedas. That's the short answer. Maybe Vijay Bhai can expand on.
Yeah, so I mean, I think even in the video, as Jaybai mentioned, the word Vedas comes from the root word vid. Vid means to know, so books of knowledge in that sense. So the thing is, it's a collection of mainly experiences, but more than not just experience of, say, personal experience of spirituality, but experience of nature, experience of the world. So any kind of experience which is seen as, at least in some way or the other, having a spiritual angle, are in the Vedas. So all kinds of activity, because if you look at the Vedas, the Rig Veda, early Vedas, which has got so many verses to, personified forces. Samaveda is musical in that sense. Yajurveda is focused a bit on more structure, grammar. So all these collections are in one way or the linked of understanding of how the world works, what we are, what is the idea of it, how do you progress spiritually in all different angles. So it's books of knowledge, vast knowledge on mainly on spirituality. That's the kind of gist of the Vedas. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we looked at what the Vedas are, how they're sort of structured and what kind of content they have. But, these were written many, many years ago. Are they still relevant in today's time?
Very good question. Actually, just one thing we have to keep in mind is, first of all, the Vedas that we have written down are but a very minuscule of Vedas that have been kind of documented. In ancient times in India, we're talking now, 2000 BC, way before coming of Abrahamic faith. The thing is that a lot of these teachings of the experiences of, many rishis or Brahmanical families are passed on orally for, hundreds of years to the students, teachers, and my families. And I would say that only 1% has remained. The vast of it has been lost for eternity, have been lost. Only that 1% that remains has actually been documented in the scriptures. And we have to keep one thing in mind: knowledge does not stop with the Vedas. Knowledge is eternal; it always keeps on coming in different ways, refreshes itself. So the Vedas are still coming out today of modern rishis of India, not just at one time. As I mentioned, so much has been lost, and only some has been documented, or like 1% maybe is documented in the 4 Vedas, which you mentioned earlier. And as time goes by, modern rishis refresh the same message which they have experienced. They've understood the nature as they understand it, and they say in a modern manner. So Vedas is living. It's not something that's archaic and ancient. It is a living thing. Knowledge is living, right? So we have to keep that in mind as well. So one thing to mention about the content of the Vedas, what we have is that we have, in the ancient Vedas, we have, something called the Karma Kand, which is the action part, and the Gnana Kand, the knowledge part. Now, the Karma Kand part is seen as the earlier part of the Vedas, where you see ancient rishis of India saying, saying hymns to personified forces. And there's the Sahita part. Sahita is the part where you praise the, personified, like Vayu, Indra, Agni. And if you notice one thing, Nishit Bhai, even today we use those verses in wedding ceremony, child naming ceremony, or when you do, Satyanarayana, any kind of katha you do, when you do havans, use that. It's a very good thing. That means Hindus still have not lost the connection with nature. And it may look a bit strange sometimes, but it's a very beautiful thing that we actually personify nature. Because nature in itself is divine. So saying wind is Vayu is a good thing, or like, water is Ma, Ganga is a good thing. So the earliest verses were personified, praising nature of forces personified. But that's good enough, well and good. But how do you actually worship them? And then came the Havan and Yagna, sacrifice. How do you worship the actual practice? One is hymns. How do you practice the Havans? When you do Havans, Havans, you pray to them, you link with these forces. When you link with these forces, you're linking with nature itself, and indirectly linking with God as well. That's why Havans are important. That's the actual part. But notice one thing, all that is external. Yeah. And then eventually, later part of the Upanishad, of the Vedas comes the Gnan part, where the Upanishads come in. And for the first time, we move from the external to the internal. Okay, it's fine. We worship. What about us? What is inside us? And then comes the Gnana. So by and large, there's two parts. There is repeat again, Karma Kand, action part, Gnana part, knowledge part. Karma Kand has got two parts, Sanhita, which is hymns. Then Brahmana is called the Yagnas. And then in the Gnana Kand, we have something called Aranyak, early forest text. The first time we start looking inward, they're very few, I think about 3 or 4. And the culmination is called the Upanishads. And the Upanishads are the highest teaching of the Vedas. That's the kind of structure, yeah?
That's brilliant. I mean, there are so many little nuggets in there. You've given so much into a little condensed version. I'm going to pick apart what you've said and ask you specific questions around this. And it's very, very exciting to see that, these are one of the pillars of Hinduism, and we get to delve into this topic a little bit deeper. But before I do that, let me just say a quick shout out to some of our regular viewers who are watching us on YouTube. We got Donald Trump, who's been with us every week. We got Rahul, another regular. We got Magpie, Moon, and we've got Raj Kanakya. We've got Christine watching us from the US, another regular viewer with us every week. We got Tejashwara. We got Charmaine from South Africa, one of our regular supporters. And it's always nice to see these people on the broadcasts every week. We got Stefan, and we've got a few other people on our channels. Thank you so much for joining us. And so, Manish, maybe I can ask you these. What's the relationship between the Upanishads and the Vedas?
Right. So Upanishads are part of Vedas, but they come as Vijay Bhai said, they came at the end of the Vedas. It's like conclusion of Vedas. So they are part of it, and they are also called Vedanta because they are conclusion of Vedas. Vijay Bhai, anything further to add on?
Yeah, so that's basic. So they actually call the Vedanta. Ved-ant. Ant means the end of the Vedas, Vedanta. And they are the highest. The Upanishads actually means Upashada, means as you go near to the Upanishads, your delusion gets destroyed. Some people say Upanishad means go to a guru and destroy your delusion about nature. So you find out your true essence. But by and large, the beautiful thing about the Vedas is this, that they only talk about what's inside us, what is out there, and the universe as we see it, and the connection with the three. They don't bother about moral code, how you should live, how you should marry. Well, nothing like that. It's purely philosophical. That is why they're eternal for a long, long time. They don't bother with mundane things. They were really powerful stuff. And they discuss the idea like the Atman inside us, the Brahman out there, are they the same? Are they different? And the world around us, is it reality? Is it an illusion? How did the world come into being? What is our link? And those are the profound, fundamental questions the Upanishads focus on. And that's the beauty about it. Some of the most fundamental questions which humans ask are what the Upanishads discuss. So in that sense, they're the culmination of the Vedic teachings, I guess. Yeah.
Super. Yeah. So that was a question we had from Tejashwara, asking, from which part of the Vedas the Upanishads were taken. So that's thank you for sort of highlighting that it's from the end of the Vedas, right?
Yeah, I think one thing you have to be careful is that when you say the end, it doesn't come in the last chapter. Because the Vedas is given 10 mandalas, and every mandala is run by a Brahmanical kind of lineage. So at the end of the mandalas, you'll have Upanishads. But any person who's kind of skilled in reading the scholarship of Vedas exactly knows what the Upanishads are. So they are peppered in the Vedas in different places. But you can see, because even the name starts as Kathopanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, Mundak Upanishad. So you know exactly where they are. So you can pick those nuggets out. But they are the ultimate highest teachings of the Vedas. So yeah, I mean, that's one thing to keep in mind. Yeah.
Super. So the next question is, the Vedas were actually passed down as an oral it was passed down traditionally in an oral form until we were then able to write down. But the question is, are the Vedas the word of God, and do we have to accept them as they're written?
Good, very good question. I think one thing we have to be very careful is that they're not the word of God literally. They are the experiences of rishis. I mean, ultimately, even we can become rishi and experience that. With the vast experience of collection of all the rishis who actually become enlightened. So what the rishis are saying that I have achieved this and this is what I have understood. You go and do it yourself. Don't just believe me blindly. This is just showing you guidance. If I can do it, so can you. And that's one thing you have to keep in mind. These are experiences of great rishis as a guide to us so that we can try it ourselves. So I think quite often we try and compare ourselves with the Abrahamic faith, and partly it's because of 1,000 years of being ruled by Abrahamic faith, one or the other. We've been mentally been implemented that the scriptures are the only authority. We should follow them blindly. No, we shouldn't do that. But the thing is, they're really fantastic scriptures because they give us a lot of guidance to us. But as I always say before, keep in mind, the ultimate book, the greatest book of all is yourself. You go out and experience it yourself. So yes, very good. I love the Vedas and I admire them. I respect them, but they are not something you follow blindly. You take stuff from their nuggets and you imbibe them in your life and try and do that as well for yourself. That's the key thing to remember here.
If I add, so as Vijay by saying, they're called apuriseya. The spiritual experience cannot be expressed into the words. So when it comes into words, it lost that potency. So that's where it's coming from, that it become relative to the mindset of the person who is saying it.
Yeah. So you are saying it has to be something
in that sense, they are not.
It is something that has to be experienced.
Yes.
I think as Manish mentioned
into words.
Yeah. As Manish mentioned, Apurusheya means Purusha means humanity. Apurusha means they're not of human kind of origin. Their vast divine is beyond the body, is experienced within. So I think that's one thing that we have to keep in mind. But mainly it's the vast experience that we have to understand. Yeah.
So what language were the Vedas written in?
Again, we have to be very careful. The language that written in were actually Sanskrit, but it's archaic Sanskrit. People think it's a grammar of Panini. It's not a Panini grammar. That's why they're difficult to understand. And you have to be a very good skilled scholar. There are many scholars in India, but by and large, even if you read them, you will notice that sometimes some of the verses can be interpreted in multiple ways. I mean, that's why I've always say that do not follow the translation of some of these Western scholars. They're very biased in how they see things. So I think by and large, I would say that many different gurus may have interpreted the same verse slightly differently. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that they're not based on some structured grammar like Panini. They have a structure of their own, but it's an old kind of Sanskrit language. Because they're very old books, you have to keep that in mind, right? But nevertheless, they've got tremendous knowledge, which is of our history. The best thing I like of the Vedas is that take any belief in the world, monotheism beliefs of the American Indians of nature worship, beliefs in going in trance, because in Vedas also the idea of going in trance. Sometimes it is soma, soma is like a drink you take to alter your mind, alter your experience. You can experience something higher than yourself. So in effect, Vedas is an entire encyclopedia of all the different kinds of experiences that humans have ever experienced to try and catch that divine thing. So in effect, it's a huge encyclopedia. We are lucky to have that because in some of the Abrahamic faiths, they have destroyed anything before. Oh, we can't have this. This is the new stuff. Like paganism was destroyed in Europe. In the case of Islamic tradition, Jahiliyyah before Islam was destroyed. Hinduism is one that's kept. We didn't have destroyed anything. We have said all these paths are valid for whoever you are, depending from where you live, your geographical, your tradition. That's the starting point. You see in the Vedas. That's the Vedas is like a glimpse, a deep glimpse into the beliefs of entire humanity, and that's the beauty of it. Yeah.
Amazing. Manish bhai, you have anything to add on?
No, nothing further to add.
Okay. So the next thing would be, if the Vedas were written in an ancient language that's not easy for modern people to understand, where does one get a modern translated version? And do we need to reinterpret it? Because most of these were translated by Western scholars. They may have a skewed version of things based on their own interests, or they may have simply misunderstood the translation themselves in good faith. Do we need some skilled Indian scholars to translate and reinterpret it again? And
Okay.
where does one get like a good version translated, which is accurate?
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, I think, some of the examples we have, I think Max Muller wrote one example of a copy. I can't remember the other scholars. There are quite a few other scholars, English scholars. But they wrote it at a time when their understanding of the world was different. They believed in the Aryan theory very strictly, which is now kind of dying away. They had this inherent bias as well on the idea that people with light skin are superior, inferior. So these are the kind of prejudice and mindsets they had when they interpret the Vedas and wrote it down. So personally, my view is that don't look at those interpretations. They are kind of out the window. But the modern ones, depending, I would say that whatever tradition you follow, the gurus you follow, get them to help you. But even better is for the teaching of the modern gurus, acharyas of India, like Raman Maharishi, Vivekananda. I mean, Raman Maharishi teachings, if you look at Raman Maharishi teaching, you can Google Raman Maharishi, or you can look at his, there's a very big Facebook group of his. Everything he talks about is the Upanishad, literally, but in a modern manner, with a modern interpretation, modern example. Because remember, the people living at that time was very different at Vedic times. Now, the world has changed. So how do you give modern interpretation, modern angle? And this is where Swami Vivekananda, like Ramakrishna Paramahans, Raman Maharishi come in, or even like Anand Mahima, their understanding of the Vedas. Even now, I mean, I listened to one guru, India is very famous. It's called, I think, Swami Advaishanand Giri, who's very, very famous in Haridwar. Even when he talks about the Vedas, it's the Vedic same teaching, but in a much more modern fashion. As Jaybai mentioned, don't forget, Vedas are living. They are not dead with that particular written text. They are living. So the living, so the lot of modern acharyas who understand the Vedas very well, and they give in a modern format, I would say they are much, much better to understand. Nevertheless, if you want some interpretations, there are some really good modern scholarly works. You can get proper interpretations. I think there's some copies, I can't remember, but they're very expensive though, like 400 or 500 pounds a set. They don't have proper scholars, literal translation. But what I would say is that don't go for old translation, go for the modern translation. But even better, take the words, the Vedas is coming out the mouth of great modern rishis. They will be the best guide for you. Nevertheless, if you're really interested, I would say pick up some modern interpretations. There's quite a few, I can't name offhand. There's quite a few. Don't go for the ancient English ones. They're not that good in my view. That's all I can add to that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Manish bhai?
Yes, just wanted to add that trying to understand Vedas will be very difficult even when you have a modern interpretation, especially when you look at all these samhitas and all these hymns, and how do you make sense of it? It will be quite hard. So as Vijay Bhai was saying, better to stick with someone like Swami Vivekananda or Ramakrishna Paramahans, because they are teaching modern Vedas in a way.
Amazing. I have still got so many questions of my own here on the Vedas, but I'm going to cut to a few questions from the viewers. We got Stefan, and he's asking that the head god in the Vedas seems to change from Agni to Brahma to Vishnu over time. Do the Upanishads say that all of them are just God in another form?
Sorry, repeat again. I didn't get it fully. Sorry.
The head god
Yes.
in the Vedas seems to change over time from Agni to Brahma to Vishnu. Do the Upanishads say that all of them are just God in another form?
Technically, the Upanishads actually don't talk of Agni, Vayu. If you notice, they talk about Atman and Brahman primarily. By the way, Vishnu is hardly mentioned. Maybe, luckily, maybe once, because I'm not even sure if it's mentioned at all. But Agni, Vayu, Varun, as we mentioned, is the earliest beliefs. And they
So the
evolved.
forces of nature.
Yeah, forces personified. And then they became the Upanishads. So by and large, we can say that in many ways, they are seen as different interpretations of the divine as is experienced in nature. Don't forget, in the case of Hinduism, by and large, the Atma in the trees, Atma in us, we are all technically God. So if you see God in Vayu, there's nothing special about that. Or God in Agni, there's nothing special. By and large, they're all, as you say, as I agree with him, that in effect, they're also different forms of Godhead, if you're going to call it that, of the ultimate supreme principle, ultimate reality in that sense. I think we have to be very careful in Hinduism. We should always not do separate things out. Divinity is one, it's everywhere. That's the key thing to keep in mind, yes? I think we ask this question because, again, we are so much impacted by the Abrahamic idea. There has to be one ultimate God, everything is subsidiary. No, everything is linked with divinity. We have to keep that in mind.
Super. Now, in the Vedas, you mentioned there's a section that talks about the havans and yagnas and things like that. And I know in Hinduism, we have the certain areas for rituals. And this has become almost like a science with the yantras, as Jaybai used to say. And we have a question from Charmaine. She's asking, is there a scientific explanation in the Vedas about the dimensions of the Havan Kund and the requirements of the rituals? For example, ghee and samagri and everything. And I think it's important to connect that with, connecting with nature.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing is, yes, by the way, there's something called the Upaveda, subsidiary Vedic scriptures. There's the Stapatya Veda, there is the Veda for the, the Stapatya architectural for architecture. There's Vedas for, sculptures, craftsmanship. So by and large, Hindus have always believed that one thing to keep in mind, again, is important, is that Hinduism has never made a difference between the knowledge of the divine and science. If you notice the ancient Gurukul system, they don't say Gnan of spirituality and Gnan of science, or Bhugol, which is history, so geography, Itias. They were all bunched into one. There was no distinction. So when we say that Havans have to be particular shape or particular dimensions, they all have special ideas behind it, special rituals, and a special kind of link to personified forces, link to energy. They were all one. There was no distinction at that time. So in effect, by and large, yes, if you use ghee, rituals, how you do it, in what manner you do it, all is interconnected. Now, I'm not an expert in that idea, but I know that one of the 6 learning branches of Vedas is that idea, is the idea of how to do Havans and Yagna. But Havan is a very good thing, because if you understand it, the problem is most people do it and they just get bored after 2 hours, do it. And they don't know that they're just throwing rice and ghee. But the key idea is Havan is a form of sacrifice, means giving up something for something higher. It's linking yourself to the higher beings. How do you connect to something higher? Not only outside, also internally. So when I do swaha, I'm purifying myself of my vices, of my bad habits. Also, I'm linking to higher. So Havan has got a very, very special significance. And yes, there are people do it, take it seriously. There's a lot of difference on how the Havan should look like, what direction it should face, what shape, how deep it should be, what it should be built of. Is it any old? No, it should be proper, clay bricks. Everything is planned. And I've seen that happening when I've seen some acharyas in India do it. And they go in great detail on exactly how it's planned. So there's a science behind it in that sense. Key thing is everything is connected. Everything is divine. Everything is connected. Keep that in mind. Yes. Yeah. Interesting
Amazing.
question. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, Manish bhai, we've mentioned that there are so many things included within the Vedas. Some of the groups go towards, for example, the Havans. We're talking about Arya Samaj.
Yeah.
Then there are other groups who would go in different directions depending on what else the Veda is saying. And the Vedas also looks into some of the darker practices, like we talked about Soma, which is using substances that can have mind-altering kind of experiences and things like that. With such a vast array of things that are within the Vedas, is it not possible that people can interpret the Vedas in different ways? It's the same set of text, but the way you look at it, you could pick it and choose what you want out of it and interpret it in your own way.
So it's true, Nishit bhai is saying. I think people sometimes have a feeling that Vedas are literally the unaltered word of God. That's not how it works. I mean, I've seen some gurus saying, no, Vedas are perfect. They should be interpreted this way. But I'll give you an example. There are some mantras in the Atharva Veda. It tells you how to, how to get somebody to get a disease, or how to get somebody dark arts. If your enemies, if you use these mantras, they'll cause bad luck. There's all these kind of mantras. Again, the thing is remember, as I mentioned, there's a vast collection of experiences. Some are actually negative, some are, most of them are positive experiences. The idea is this: you have to pick what makes sense to you and how to imbibe into yourself. It is not a literal word of God that you block your mind and say, okay, I have to accept it blindly. It doesn't work like that. It's a collection of all the different practices. Now, look, if somebody at that time was trying Soma to say, okay, I take Soma. By the way, if you take Soma, you have already got to be a very spiritual person, else it impacts you very negatively. Soma was something anybody took. Only people who are really specialized or deeply spiritual would take that. But by and large is this, that the experience that you have to decide for yourself how to use that to increase yourself spiritually. It's got so much ideas, so many collections. But you, as I said, you are the greatest book of all. You decide how it helps you. So there's amazing stuff there. But don't say, oh, this is there, this bad architect. You don't have to work like that. Yeah, take what guides you and what helps you best. Yeah, that's the key thing to mention. Yeah.
So I think
Yes.
it's time we can maybe summarize this topic a little bit, and I'll come to each one of you to share your final thoughts on the Vedas and how relevant they are in today's time. Now, before I do that, I have one last question, which is, why is it that compared to popular scriptures like maybe Ramayana and the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas are not so much read by people today?
I think that's a good question. I mean, Gita is by far the most popular, because it's a much more modern interpretation and much more easier to understand. As Manish mentioned, one thing to keep in mind is this, that it is very difficult to write on experiences you have, divine experience you have of rishis, which are apurushaya, which are not beyond the idea of humanity. To put in word is severely limiting it. How do you, it's like, if I ask you, it's a very maintained question. If you really love with somebody, you love somebody so much, okay, put it in paper. No matter how much you put paper, you will never be express it fully, because the words limit your experiences, right? So same thing, the experience you have in rishis is so intense. That's why the Vedas is difficult to understand what the experience was. Gita is a message by Krishna to Arjuna. So Gita is much easier to understand. Ramayana is also very beautiful. Ramayana talks about human relationships, or the Mahabharata, and that's something we all relate to very easily. So it's much easier. But keep one thing in mind, that it is the Vedas which are the Shruti, means the scriptures having heard, and they are higher authority. The Gita, Ramayana, they are low. Even though the Gita is Shruti-like, it's very, very high, ultimately they come in the Smriti category of a low authority. So you're right. I mean, these are scriptures we need to use on a daily basis. One thing I'll also mention here is that, all the great acharyas of India, which is Ramanuja, Shankara, Madhava, Chaitanya, they have used 3 scriptures to make their philosophies, to help them guide. One is Upanishads, the Gita, and the Brahma Sutra. And they are called the Prasthan Trayi, the 3 foundations. But even they have their own understanding and interpretations. I would say that the Gita, Ramayana are much more easier today because they're much more easy to read, and they're much more linking to our daily life experiences. So they're much more easy to understand. But Upanishads are still higher authority. Keep that in mind. Yes. Yeah.
Amazing. So, Manish Bhai, let's round off this topic for today. What are your final thoughts on the Vedas?
Yes, I think as we see in Rig Veda, it said Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. And that's the central idea, that ultimate reality is one, but different people with different mindset will look at it, experience it differently, and will express it differently. And that's the beauty of it. And that's why we have all these different versions and different translations, and even going further, new rishis like Ramana Maharshi and Ramakrishna Paramhans, giving it in modern sense. And that's the beauty of it. So I think what we need to get gist of it is Vedas are a living thing, and different people will interpret it differently, and different people will understand it differently and talk about it differently. And we accept that difference, but it's a living thing. And we have modern rishis who has explained the spirituality in the modern languages. So we don't have to go back to the Sanskrit and old Vedas. We can relate to it much more clearly with modern rishis.
Just one point to add there, I think Manish Bhai covered it pretty nicely, is I remember Vivekananda saying that the truths can be seen in 1,000 different ways, and all of them are true. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
fabulous. So now I think we can say that we've explored a really interesting topic. The Vedas are one of the cornerstones of Hinduism, and they are a universal text, like Vijay Bhai mentioned. It's not about just how we should live life, but it's about our relationship with the universe and our relationship internally with ourselves. And so that's a really good topic to discuss, and we can now open up for general Q&A. And I have the first question here ready. This question is from Hari Prasad, and the question is death predetermined at birth?
a very hard question, but all I can say is this: This is a question that has been debated since eternity. Is life predetermined or is it free will? That's a very powerful question, right? It's a tricky question because if you say life is predetermined, then why bother making decisions? Whatever you do is already determined by God anyway. God can see the future and he knows how your life is going to play out. So why bother living? Just do whatever you like. After all, it's God doing it, right? It's not me. Life is predetermined. God knows how the future is and he knows what I'm going in the future, right? But if you say God is giving you free will, then God doesn't know what you're doing. Then God is not all-knowing. So this is a catch-22. You can't win either way. Yeah. So the question is this: how do you tackle that question? It's interesting. You'll be surprised that actually Acharyas of India, the ancient Acharyas of India, have actually discussed this question quite deeply. You name it, Ramanuja, Shankara, Madhava, they all tackle this question very deeply because, again, I repeat again, if life is predetermined, and because God knows the future of everything, then why bother making decisions? Why bother deciding? Because whatever you do, God is making you do it, right? You're in control. If you say life is free will, then God doesn't know what you're doing, then God is not all-knowing. Either you're stuck. What Hindus say is this: life being predetermined and free will are both appearances. They're not ultimately true. So ultimately, you're already free. Your Atma is already free. You just don't know it. You're stuck in a material journey, struggling to find that true knowledge. All this is just but illusory or temporary. Ultimately, so in this question, when you say death is determined by birth, if you mean by Atman, then no, Atman is already free from death or birth. Yeah, it's again, Manisha's word apurushaya. It's already free. Life and death is just something that happens in the material world to give you time to find out who you truly are. So in that sense, I guess if you die, when you're born, if you don't achieve moksha, when your body dies, your body is born again in terms of reincarnation. But the idea of predetermined life and free will is seen as appearances, ultimately already free. Just going to find that out, basically. Yeah. Very tricky question, actually, from Hari.
Very tricky indeed. This one can make you, go down the rabbit hole. Manish Bhai, do you have any thoughts on this one?
As Jaibai used to say, everything is predetermined by God, but we are God, so we got free will to, express our free will.
Yeah, there you go.
Change it the way we like.
One thing I remember from Jaibai is his, always positive and can-do spirit. He will never allow somebody to wallow in self-pity or be negative or anything like that. He's always positive, can-do, and will-do kind of attitude. And so that's the kind of spirit I would say you need to have. And when it comes to free will, whether you have it or not, always have that attitude. And then you try and discover it. So we have another question from Steven. The question is that people talk about how you have to concentrate intensely to meet God. Why don't people just ask God to come to them? He says that God came to me in person when I needed God. Why do people need to struggle?
Talk about how to. Sorry, so people talk about how you have to intersect.
So he's saying, Vijay, he's saying, so people talk about concentrating, meditating. He's saying, why don't you just pray to God and ask God to come to you and God will come to you? Why not just go that way?
Why does it have to be so hard for God to appear before you? That's what he's saying.
Okay, I think the one thing to keep in mind is this. Again, in Hinduism, we have to understand that the idea of God is very closely tied to yourself. The question is this: can you change yourself so you become God-like? Then God will automatically is already there inside you. You go discover it. The idea is not that you're going to catch a God out there. Even if you believe in the Dvaita tradition where God is separate, God is inside you. The question is, can you discover Him? He's already there. You don't have to fight for it. The thing is love, compassion. You don't have to intensely. People think that you have to go in the mandir and doing manjiras and every day. No. You lead a life, intensive spiritual life. How you help others, what you make, how you get knowledge. I mean, that's why we have 4 pathways to moksha, right? Karma marg, Gnan marg. Any pathway which makes you feel more spiritual overall, then you see God in yourself. Whether it's Krishna. I remember the classics of Ram, Hanuman. When he tore his chest, Ram sits inside him. So when somebody asks him, oh, but your God, where is your God? I don't have to go look for God outside. God is inside me, and He's kind of showed God. So the thing is, you don't have to look for God. God is already inside you. You just go discover that He's there. So the question of struggle is this: is the question is we struggle because we are too much stuck into mundane daily life, and we have desires which are more attractive than finding the true inside us. The day you discard all this, it'll just come out automatically. You don't have to find them. Yes. So the question is, how do you lead your life? That's what some people say. Hindi is a way of life. Kind of. That's what they mean, I guess. Yeah. Good question.
I just want to take a minute to acknowledge all the wonderful folks online who've been contributing all their thoughts and questions, and we got our regular viewers who are having a good old conversation on YouTube, and it's wonderful to see everybody pitch in and share their thoughts and comments on the topic of the day. And so I'll bring on the next question, which is from Tejashwara again as well, which is basically asking that how do I bear with me, I will just bring the question up. How do I remember that I am not the body nor the mind? I tend to forget this when I'm dealing with certain people.
I think we all do. It's not unique to one person. We all struggle quite often. In the morning, I do that sometimes. I start off saying, today I will see everybody is divine. I will not see the mind and body. Within 5 minutes, I jump into the mind and body. That's because we always try to live a normal life, trying to interact with people. But ultimately, mind and body are tied to space, time, and causation. As Swami Vivekananda said, Desh, Kal, Nimit. Anything bound by space, time, and causality cannot be ultimately free. But we do that. So I agree. It's just a question of practice and deep spiritual experiences. I mean, that's why, when you look at the lives of Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Ramana Maharishi, you understand what it is to be somebody who transcends this, the idea of mind and body. The way they talk, the way they interact with people, you understand what they mean. But I guess that's why their lives are that's why I would say, study the lives of these great people, Ramana Maharishi, or Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Anand Mahima. When you look at their lives, you understand, oh, these people really know that they're not the body and mind. But it's very hard. I agree with you. It's not something easy for normal people like us, because you have to interact with somebody. But having said that, don't feel bad, because if you at some level we have to do that anyway, because you have to lead a life, right? We got to feed ourselves from families. That's not bad too. But when you get some spare time, try and meditate, try and think of yourself deeply. Who am I? And am I really this body and mind? Of course you're not. And spend some time, and slowly you'll progress from that angle, I guess. Yeah.
I suppose the only way is then to sort of counteract your living, you're interacting with people, you're going to get riled up and charged up by people. And so using other ways to sort of counterbalance that.
Yeah.
Super. Manish Bhai, we have a question from one of the viewers as well, saying that, can bhakti to an object lead to moksha?
Interesting question. And as Jaibai would say, if one pointed devotion or concentration on anything can lead you to the spiritual experience, and the spiritual experience can set you free. So it is possible. But bear in mind, if you are focusing on an object, you're more likely to become materialistic. And if you lose that focus, then you may not progress very well. So you try to focus on something that is, more spiritual or eternal by nature. Then at least that focus remains, hopefully. Vijay, for anything to add on that?
All I can say is, when you say, object, look, one thing I must mention here, even though sometimes, we talk high philosophy saying, oh, God is the principle which, pervades the universe. The fact remains our five senses will make it very hard to see the abstract principle. Unless you're very spiritual, intense spiritual, you will not see that. So we all need some sort of image or object to focus on. And the word we use in Hinduism is called pratik, or what from prati, we get two words, pratima, with image of God, and pratik means symbol of God, like, Om sign or a lamp. So when we use these pratiks, they help us go towards God. But as Manish mentions, you have to be spiritual the way you see the object, right? If you see a gold, gold monument of Om, and thinking of gold, then you lost the plot. We focus on the image to see something, to focus intense, give intense focus, then it's good. By the way, it doesn't have to be an object. You also be an endeavor. If you love singing, classical singing, and you really focus intensely, notice that you'll feel spiritual. It doesn't have to be an object. It can be any endeavor, a good, noble endeavor like sports, music, art. If you're good into painting, do with intense love and spirituality. Like when you draw a tree, see the tree as divine and draw it, it'll make you spiritual. So bhakti can come in many different ways. Yeah, like that. Yeah.
Super. So we are going to wrap up in the next couple of minutes. And I just wanted to share some feedback from a viewer. We got Stephen on the channel here. And he's just saying that I'm so happy to be here with all of you. This feels more like a satsang than a random group of people. Stefan, we appreciate you. Thank you for joining us today. And you are most welcome to join us. We do this every week on a Saturday at 2 o'clock UK time. So feel free to join us every week. And we also have various other people on the channel. We got Dustin, and Charmaine and various other people who've been contributing. So thank you all for sharing your thoughts and your comments on our broadcast for today. So finally, Manish Bhai, do you have any questions for Vijay Bhai? I've been asking many of the questions. I want to give you a chance to ask a few questions of Vijay Bhai.
Yes, Vijay Bhai, one question is this animal sacrifice that pop up. We just launched a video a couple of weeks back. And people say animal sacrifice, no, actually Hinduism is not in Vedas. Where is it? And it's a tantric practice, not and in part of Devi worship and not actually Hinduism. What is your take on that animal sacrifice?
Okay, I think good question, because we have to keep one thing in mind, that Hinduism is a vast collection of beliefs, and there've been very many tribal people in India, or even people from the hills. They're basically nothing grows. They raise animals. If you look at some of the, especially I think in Nepal or some areas, like in some Garhwal hills, they basically only grass grows. They raise animals, animals. They actually do eat meat, to be honest. Now for them, if they want to offer something to God, they're not going to offer grain. They don't have grain to offer. So their idea is that we offer, sacrifice. So the question is this: is it right or wrong? All I would say is that by and large, Hinduism discourages that practice. It doesn't allow. Even in the Vedas, you'll be surprised. There are some verses which talk about animal sacrifice, but they're very, very element, very, very strict on how you do it, and only in very strict conditions. So by and large, the thing is that it actually limited, when the Vedas came about, it limited sacrifice, not increased, but limited it severely. So the thing is this, that in modern day, I would say modern Hinduism, there is no need for sacrifice. And I'm glad that the Nepalese government has banned some of the biggest, that was one to, I think, Gadima or something like that, just hundreds of animals, that is now stopped. And people are okay with it. So in many ways, it's stopped. But yes, it's to happen because some people felt that that's the only thing they can offer to God. But then you think, of course, is the animal divine? Why are we doing that? That's true as well. But we have to keep in mind that not every geographic area is the same. Not everybody has the same food. I know in the case of Bengal state, offering fish to God is quite common, because they don't even see fish as actually an animal. They see it as the fruit of the sea. Because if you ever go to Bengal, the river Ganga at the end becomes so many estuaries. You talk 10 meters of the estuary somewhere, like a delta format. There's water everywhere, and that's fish is everywhere. So they have grown up eating that. So for them, that is seen as normal. So all I can add to this is that by and large, Hinduism discourages that practice, but because of some ancient rituals, some people still may do it, and that's how they see it. So don't vilify them, don't say bad things about them. That is how they see their practice. And it's quite often we get carried away. We have to be very careful. Like recently I was discussing on the internet, people say these tribal people, they worship trees, and very strange. But the thing about this, living in the urban area, what do we know about nature? What do we know about trees? Nothing. The experience of trees, hundreds of years of tradition, the connection with nature is so far more intense. Of course, they're going to see things differently and worship God differently. As Manishma mentioned, ekam sat, vipra bahuda vadanti. One ultimate truth, many ways to achieving. And that's the beauty of Hinduism. We should keep that in mind. Yes, that's all I can say on that. So yes, we shouldn't have it, but if there's some people doing it because of the traditions deep, we shouldn't vilify them in that sense. Yeah, that's all I can add to that. Yeah.
Superb. We've had a fantastic session. I'm going to round it off with one last question, and then we can bring it to a close. So this question is from a viewer called Saurav Keshari. And the question is it true that you have to find your own path to reach moksha? I have read some yogi, the story of Paramhansa Yogananda, and it seems that you cannot follow others' path to reach moksha. You have to carve out your own.
Actually, Paramahansa Yogananda is fantastic. Reading his work is actually very nice works by him. But yes, it's true. I mean, even if you have a guru, because I'll tell you something, I've talked to some gurus, there's some I'm really close to, and they say the same thing. Ultimately, it's not the guru's path, it's not the path of the scriptures. Ultimately, it's your own path. But of course, you need a guru, scriptures to guide you and help you to get there. But a true guru will always say that find your own path. And reminds me again of Swami Vivekananda in America. Somebody asked him, oh, how many gods do you believe in? We believe in 300 million gods. And the classic answer he gave was this: we believe in as many gods as there are people. So every path is unique. And I think we should respect that as well. And that's the beauty of Hinduism. Have you noticed one thing in Hindu families, especially modern ones, you may have father believing in Advait, mother believing in Bhakti, and some children are agnostic and atheist, and everything is okay. Nobody's pushing anybody because ultimately they're all making path. So inherently in Hinduism, we already believe that. We just don't know. We never challenge our children. The children goes, oh, I love Hanuman. You're not going to say no just because of Vishnu, right? You say, okay, fine, do that. Yeah. So by and large, you already kind of follow that path regardless. So we all trained like that anyway.
Super. So folks, we are at 57 minutes into the broadcast today. We did start a couple of minutes behind. Tech troubles as always. But what I do want to share with you all are some of our resources here. So, we've been very active on our YouTube channel. We've been very active on Facebook. But one place where I would like you to help us out is to join us on our Twitter channel, where we've now grown to over 41,000 followers on Twitter. As you can see, we are broadcasting live on Twitter as well. So if you are on Twitter, please do follow Hindu Academy on a regular basis. You will find some material over there that is not found on other channels at all. So it's a nice way to find some golden nuggets that you won't find on the other social media channels. The next thing I'd like to share with you is we've got a website, hindu-academy.com. We've got a free Hinduism course where we've got over 8,000 people who've signed up for it. You can also download the ebooks we've got here for Hinduism for the primary schools. And there are other resources here as well. That is the course for Hinduism. As I said, over 8,000 people have now signed up for this thing. And those are our sort of primary areas of connecting with the community here. Now, the last thing, I always end with a quote from Swami Vivekananda. I have brought this quote in here because I thought it was a nice one based on the topic that we had. And it is to connect religion and nature, but this is different nature. This is not nature out there, this is nature in here. So the greatest religion is to be true to your own nature. Have faith in yourselves. That's a really nice quote from Swami Vivekananda. With that, I'd like to bring it to an end for today's session and give a huge thank you to Manish Bhai, Vijay Bhai, for hosting a fantastic session today. Do you have any final thoughts for our viewers?
No, thank you for joining and listening to us, I guess. Thank you so much, supporting us in our work.
Thank you, viewers. Yes, thanks for joining, and hopefully see you again next week.
Fabulous. See you all next week, Saturday, 2 o'clock as always. Bye-bye for now.